So now you have your yarn supply on hand, you have your loom set up, and your leashes and leash bar wrapped, and you're ready to begin weaving. Of course, there's a mind-boggling array of possibilities for rug weaving out there, but in this video I will show you a high pile version and a simple flat weave. My friends here like to start their rugs with some sort of special edging. So they wrap or collect a larger strand of yarn by making several rounds of a smaller strand. And these bunches of yarn, they then set in the bottom of the warp webbing and make it into a twist pattern. Sometimes they do a single twist, and sometimes they do a double opposing twist, which ends up looking like a braid. This twist or these twists make a firm edge for the beginning of your first rows of weft. It needs to be finished across the full length of the full width of the rug, and then the ends are braided, separated into three bunches, and braided into what will become a little decorative tassel on the corner of the rug. Some rugs are begun by pressing this first edge, this twist, flat against the beginning of the rug, which will mean the rug would have no fringe on that beginning edge. The rug will have a fringe on its final edge, because when you cut it off of the loom at the end, you will have remaining warp threads visible, which will be tied off so that they can't come apart. If you want to leave a fringe on both ends, you must simply leave space between the edge of the warp and where you set the twist or the braid. Here you can see a wool version of the single twist being placed in, and this one was pressed immediately down against that cord that is supporting the bottom of the warp. So this rug did not have a fringe on one side when it was finished. The other side did have a fringe, which I tied knots to keep it from coming open. To leave a fringe on both sides, you simply have to leave space when you begin. Next, you lay a few strands of weft. Even if you're going to use a high pile knot, you still want 5 or 6 or 7, an inch or two of plain weave to set your edge in a good strong weave. In this video, I am using a combination of sheep's wool and yarn salvaged from old sweaters. That's probably the most common materials used here, but another popular one is strips of old cloth, cut from old clothes, and so forth. As soon as you get an inch or two of your rug started, it's very important to secure the edges to the edge of the loom to pull horizontal tension. This prevents you from making the rug too tight and making it ripple as you work. If you look closely, you can see that this weft thread is what they call open. Before I set the next weft, I need to raise this cane, which opens up the shed in the other direction. Now that thread is closed, and I'm ready to put another one through. In this rug, I'm typically doing about 3 rows of weft between each row of knots. That could be adjusted according to your taste or how thick of knots you're making or how thick your weft threads are. Each row is pounded down with that comb-like thing. I don't know what it's called, but it works very well. I use bunches of yarn to make the high pile knots. It's similar to latch hook, if you ever did that as a child. Each knot is wrapped around 2 threads, first one direction, then the other. Tightened down against the weft and trimmed, either with scissors or a knife. No knots are tied from the edges of the rug where you have sets of 3 in the warp. These edges need to be filled extra, even if you're doing a simple flat weave, but especially when you're filling them in around the rows of knots. You can overfill these and make your rug ripply at the end, so beware of that as well. As the rug is worked, it needs to be rolled to keep fresh warp threads within the working area, the comfortable working area. This old-fashioned loom had to be untied and disassembled before I could roll up the bottom and unroll fresh webbing from the top. This warp webbing was getting loose by the time I got towards the end of it, so I kept adding chopsticks to keep it a little bit tighter so that I could work with it as I finished. So what happens if you cut a warp thread as you work? This has happened on one of my rugs, and my friend was present when it happened. In fact, she was the one who did it. I have never yet cut one, and she showed me how to take a small thread, an extra thread, and tie it on the end of the one that was cut, and simply take a darning needle with the other end and push it through towards the back, a row or 2 down. Then you keep weaving across that and tying knots until you build up another inch or 2 above it, and then you can take out that darning needle and keep going as if it had never happened. The final part of the rug making is just a reversal of the beginning. You leave an inch or so of plain weaving, and then you finish off with a set of twists. In this case, we're doing the double twist. Pound it down firmly against the rug. Then we untie all the different pieces and take a knife to the remaining warp. These ends will need to be tied, otherwise the rug will be able to come apart from that end. And there you have it. That's how to make rugs.